Well, hello. My name's Louise Savage. Welcome to my channel. I'm full of beans because I'm currently on my half-term holiday. One of the many benefits of being a teacher. And I thought I'd just have a quick chat about the books that I've been reading recently throughout May. So first up, actually it's been a really good reading month. I have been reading bits and pieces for the Women's Prize, but I've already shared some of that, so I won't be talking. Well, I think there might be one sneaky Women's Prize book that's crept in actually, but here goes. So first up is Medusa by Jessie Burton. Now I adore Jessie Burton's writing. I think she's, you know, a real contemporary talent, and I was really thrilled when I heard that she was writing this book. And she calls it Medusa, the girl behind the myth. And it, you know, it's become quite a thing, hasn't it? These modern retellings of Greek myth, particularly sort of trying to restore the female perspective. And so, you know, I'm always anxious to see, not anxious, excited to see the take that the author spins on it. And Medusa, of course, is famous for her snaky hair and for her capacity to turn things, people, objects, you name it, into stone. And therefore, you know, there's a real sort of creepiness about her in, you know, very often when she's presented in contemporary film, TV, etc., etc. What I love about this is that Jessie Burton gives her quite a sort of, I don't want to say naive, because she's not naive, but there's a kind of innocence about her, and it starts with her, you know, observing, I want to say Perseus, and you know, she's kind of spying on him, and is he aware that she's there? Is he not? And the way they kind of develop this almost you think it's going to be a friendship, you're not quite sure where it's going. So it's the characterization of Medusa and the perspective on Perseus that I found really, really fascinating, and I thoroughly recommend this. It's beautifully written as well, and also the illustrations are, I'm just trying to give you an example. I mean, anybody who's been to Greece, you know, all those squid dangling, superb, kind of draped across the page. We've got lovely Greek script as well in places. Here we go, here's Medusa cowering, and here's Perseus and the dog. You know, that beautiful cave. I mean, I just think it's really inspired. The illustrations are by Olivia Lamneck-Gill, and you know, I was bowled over by that, and I'm lucky enough to have a hardback copy. I don't know that it's out in paperback, but it's those lovely sort of glossy pages. You just want to hug it. It's just an absolute hug of a book, and I don't think it matters what age you are. I think you can get real enjoyment from this. Secondly, this month I read Trainspotting by Irvine Walsh. It's one of those books that I just never quite got round to reading, and one of my students in the sixth one was reading it, and you know, he was finding it fascinating, and I wanted to be able to discuss it with him. So I gave it a read. I saw the film in the 90s when that came out, with Ewan McGregor pictured on the front as Rents. And again, I'm really glad. I'm kind of glad I read it now. It was really interesting to look back on that kind of early 90s, late 80s, real sort of grunge, grit, grime culture. You know, Edinburgh in all its kind of, it could be any you know, modern city, but in all its kind of, you know, the sort of seedier side of life, the drug addiction, the sort of conditions that people were living in, and a totally uncompromising take on all of that, and that sense of entrapment, the idea that these characters, it's you know, they're sort of ground down by their situation. It's not that they're unintelligent, it's not that they couldn't go places and do things, but they're kind of stuck in this cycle of despair, really. And yet it's funny, you know, it's witty, it's lively, the characters are real, fabulous nicknames. Yeah, I really loved it. And the other thing I absolutely loved about it, and I like this about Roddy Doyle as well, is the use of dialogue and the use of dialect. So throughout, you know, you've got this fantastic Scottish Edinburgh dialect that, you know, is quite alienating sometimes when you're reading it in rural Shropshire, but brings, you know, brings it to life. So yeah, I'm really glad that I've finally got around to reading it. I was just flicking through it earlier and realised that for some reason this actually doesn't belong to me. I don't know if you can see. It belongs to Simon Savage of Savage Reads. Yeah, he obviously had this in 1997. So there we go, a little bit of Savage Reads memorabilia there. The third book on my selection for this month is Flamingo by Rachel Elliot. I love the cover. It's really misleading though. It doesn't, I found it, Simon and I had a bit of a discussion about this actually, why it's called Flamingo. Now at the time of the Women's Prize I hadn't quite finished reading it, so I went back and reread bits and so on. Yeah, and I think this is a very, very interesting book for several reasons. First of all, it focuses on Daniel, who is, I don't know, probably in his 30s, I'm guessing. And you know that he comes from a, you know he's had a sort of educated background, he's had a decent job, but he is presenting himself almost as a down and out. He's in this library and he's, you know, he's hungry, his clothes are filthy, he smells. And so we see things through Daniel's perspective. He's kind of walked away from his life. And then there's another narrative which links him to a girl that he was friendly with when he was a child. And Daniel and his mother, she was a single parent and they'd moved from pillar to post. Every few months they'd pack the car and move on somewhere else. He'd had this really sort of unstable childhood. And finally they settle. And one of the reasons they settle is because the neighbours that they've moved in next to are so friendly and warm, and Daniel develops this wonderful relationship with Leslie, who is the husband of that family. There's two daughters and his wife Sherry. And so there's this fantastic, it's a novel very much about friendship. It's a novel about men, not macho men, thoughtful men, kind men, soft, gentle men, which I loved. You know, I think it shows men in a very positive light, this novel. Very positive. There's an open-mindedness, there's and the relationship between Sherry and Daniel's mother becomes really, really interesting. I won't sort of divulge because it would be a spoiler. So yeah, so Daniel eventually sort of appears on their doorstep in this you know, in this state, and various things unravel, and there's a huge mystery surrounding Daniel's mum as well, and you know, why she was a single parent and why she has to move from pillar to post, and gradually you sort of unpick that as well. So yeah, I really loved this. It's a kind book, really warm-hearted. Then I picked up a Japanese novel. I think I've got a feeling for some reason it's translated from German. I don't know why I think that. I'm probably totally wrong. But anyway, it's written by Hisako Matsubara. Sorry, I haven't got my glasses on. Plus, you know, my Japanese isn't brilliant. And it's called Cranes at Dusk. And I love the cover. It's always a winner. But I fancied a novel where I was travelling off to a different place and a different time. So this novel is set in 1945. It's the aftermath of the bombs, Hiroshima, Nagasaki, etc. And it's set in Kyoto, which is a city that wasn't actually bombed. And it focuses on three families. One family is a pawnbroker's family. Another one is, I want to say a leather worker. I'm not sure that's quite right. Or shoemaker or something. And then the other family is the family of a Shinto priest, and it's the daughter of that family who kind of is the main protagonist in the novel. You mainly see things through her eyes. But it's just absolute. I loved this. It took me a little while to get into it, but I'm so glad I persevered, because the three families are all, everybody's struggling with what's happened. Everybody's not sure whether to trust the Americans or not. Hearing rumours about what happened in those other cities and not really quite knowing. There's a lot in here about religion, again, that I found really interesting. So one of the Japanese children, two of the Japanese children, start attending a Christian church. And so there are all those sort of questions about religion and philosophy. And there's a kind of, I'm doing a lot of umming. That's because I think I when I'm feeling mellow about something. Oh, there we go again. So it's like a nervous tick. There's a fable-like quality to this. It's almost told with a sort of slight fable, mythical tone to it, which I really liked. It could easily fit into that genre. And I think it's a novel that will stay with me for a very long time. It really made me think. And there's a lot to be said for that. So I fully recommend this novel. And finally, I read The Dance Tree by the wonderful Kiran Milwood Hargrave. Those of you who've seen my vlog before will know that I'm a massive, massive fan of Kiran's. And, this is, I think, her second adult novel. So she's mainly written for children, but she's also written poetry and all sorts of things. Very talented young woman. And I was a little bit nervous starting this, because you know what it's like when you've really looked forward to something and you're worried it's going to disappoint. My goodness, this did not disappoint at all. So it tells the story. It's Strasbourg. I think it's the 1700s. And there's this kind of plague of dancing. The country's at war. There's mass deprivation. People living in horrendous conditions in the city. And there's a woman who sort of kind of gets possessed and starts dancing in the city, and she dances and dances. She's been dancing for 4 days. Her feet are covered in blood, and gradually other women start to join her. So it's got that kind of, if you're familiar with Arthur Miller's Crucible, it's got that kind of, that whole thing about female hysteria and things escalating, but also, of course, because of male oppression. So that's all really interesting. And I know that Kiran's researched this, and it's based on a historical event that really did happen. Well, it would be if it was a historical event, wouldn't it? It would really happen. Now, the lead character, honestly, I only finished this the other day. That's it, Lisbeth. She is just adorable. I just adored this character. I was gutted when I finished it. I felt really bereft. I wanted to spend more time with her. And she lives in the vicinity of Strasbourg, in a more rural space. She is brilliant at beekeeping, and she has a tree as well in this clearing, and on this tree, and again, this tree will stay in my head forever. There are ribbons that she's tied to this tree, or strips of fabric, and there are 12 of them, and each one of these ribbons represents a child that she has lost because she's been unable to have a live baby, so they've been miscarriages or what have you. And it handles this, and I know this is I don't think Kiran will mind me saying, I know this is an experience that she has had herself, and she writes about it so openly, but without ramming it down your throat, if you know what I mean. It's subtle and it's thoughtful, and the empathy you feel for this woman, especially at a time when women were judged, you know, by their ability to be able to produce a child or not. During most of the novel, her husband's absent. He's gone to, the monks are wanting to take their share of the honey that the bees are producing. And Lisbeth's really worried that she's going to lose her bees. There's also, to add to that, her relationship with her mother-in-law, because of course she's at home with her mother-in-law. Her relationship with her is quite tricky, and that develops in a really interesting and realistic way. And she also has a sister-in-law who she's never met, because the sister-in-law has been away paying penance for some sin that she's committed, and Lisbeth's got, nobody talks about it, she's got no idea what this sin is. And Netta returns, and again, so it's all about evolving relationships. So Lisbeth develops a relationship with Netta. There's also a whole plot around Lisbeth's closest friend as well, and her relationship with her husband and children. So it's just, if you like, you know, if you're a fan of historical fiction, which I am, I think you would get an awful lot out of this. If you're somebody who's interested in, you know, fertility issues and you know, maybe you know somebody who's experiencing that, or you are experiencing it yourself, I think you would find comfort in this novel. It's beautiful. It's really beautiful, and like I say, I was gutted when I finished it, because I wanted to carry on living with these characters. So there we are. They are my recommendations for March. My March. Louise, get a grip. Can you tell I've got my holiday vibe on? My brain is not as focused as it normally is. That's my wrap up for May. I'm also in the middle of reading The Stranding by Kate Sawyer, and I'll feed back on that because I haven't finished it yet, but I'm hoping to feed back on that soon, because I'm enjoying that too. Anyway, lovely to see you all. I hope you have, if you are having any time off during May, I hope you really enjoy it. It's a beautiful season here in the UK. The garden is looking amazing. Yeah, it's time of year that fills me with hope. Anyway, good luck to you all. Best of luck. Have a lovely week, or however long it is, before I make my next video. Take care, everybody. Bye.